back to Politics Unplugged. Governor Hobbs added to a record number of vetoes last week. So what ended up in the reject pile? Here to talk about that, Republican consultant Matt Benson and Democratic consultant Matt Grodzki. Matt, thank you both for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Before we get into the governor working out the veto stamp again, just want to kind of get your thoughts on this early buzz surrounding our two Arizona senators. It's one thing to have one senator in the kind of rumor mill, but we now have two of them. Matt, we'll start with you since you're the resident Democrat here at the table.
I guess we're spoiled as Democrats. I think to Ron's point, it's never too early to start this type of stuff. I think both senators have made clear they're not ruling anything out. But at the end of the day, I think what's evident is they're both interested in fulfilling their current jobs, doing what's best for their constituents across the state, and I think the mutual respect between the two of them is evident. So it's fun to watch, but we got a lot of time before the next presidential election.
Again, can't stress this enough. It is far too early. I think we can all agree with that on the table here, but I want to get your initial thoughts on the buzz surrounding Kelly and Gallego.
Yeah, it's not enough just to be U.S. senator anymore. Everybody's got to have a national brand, and so it's interesting. I think the problem is if they're both trying to be kind of these pragmatic moderates, get things done Democrats, is that where the energy in the party is? And I don't believe it is. I think the energy of the party is with the young Democrats and the far left progressives and AOC and Bernie Sanders' wing.
Yeah, and we didn't even get into some of the other names that were out there. So, Matt, I just want one more follow-up on this. The fact that, both Kelly, Gallego in the rumor mill, is that just an indication of just how wide open at this point it looks like the Democratic primary for president is going to be in a few years?
I think realistically, yes. Obviously, Senator Kelly was launched into the conversation last year being part of the Veep stakes, and he's certainly done a bunch to raise his profile, not just then, but over the last couple of months with fights like with Elon Musk and Roger Stone. But yeah, I think it's going to be very similar to what we saw back in 2019. It's going to be a big primary. There's going to be a lot of different voices in there, and the party will ultimately decide when we're closer.
All right, let's move on now. Let's talk a little bit about Governor Hobbs and what she's been up to, and surprise, surprise, more vetoes. Let's start with my favorite, maybe the fun one. Governor went out and vetoed this bill regarding the Gulf of America or the Gulf of Mexico. Sending a pretty clear signal right there. No surprises, right?
What do you have against America, Dennis? Come on. Look, it's certainly kind of an interesting one, and I think our schools probably have bigger fish to fry right now than that particular issue.
Yeah, and Matt?
The country has bigger fish to fry than that particular issue. I mean, it was a soundbite that the president put out there to distract from conversation. I think she's vetoing things that are a distraction, so good for her.
Yeah, and obviously we've seen so many vetoes from this governor. I mean, is this the legacy from the first term there? Is just the amount of vetoes that bills that she has killed? I mean, she's there's so many of them piling up at this point.
Yeah, I mean, everybody likes to talk about her vetoes. She's actually signed a lot of legislation. I think a couple weeks ago there were something like 34 pieces of legislation. So at the end of the day, people say all the time, oh, does she need a new veto stamp? I think she needs a new state legislature, and that's incumbent on Democrats to make that argument about why it's so important that we need to flip this thing so we get past this divided government and some of these sillier pieces of legislation she has to deal with.
Yeah, and the legislature, they after a grueling 4 months of 4-day work weeks, have decided to take themselves a vacation a little bit. Besides some of the budget, I mean, what's left to get done down at the Capitol?
Well, Prop 123 for one.
Yeah.
I mean, the K-12 funding measure is probably the biggest thing left. I mean, the Diamondback Stadium bill is another big one that's on the to-do list. So, I mean, look, Matt makes a good point that she signs bills too, but there's some big ones that are left to be done. So, in terms of whether this session can be branded as a success for the governor or not, depends on how it ends.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of questions out there because the budget, I mean, the finances of the state are still very much dependent upon how the national economy goes. We've seen a lot of fluctuations out there. Don't you see this as creating a problem that's going to prolong this session?
I think it strengthens her hand because the trends we've been seeing with the state of the national economy have been all over the place, and concern has gone up, especially with these tariffs. So I think it puts the legislature in a dicier spot. And then again, on Prop 123, the fact that Republicans are holding this up because they want to protect ESAs and enshrine those in the state constitution. That's not a popular position, and I think it's clearly a non-starter for the governor. So we'll see. We'll see what June looks like, but it's going to be a fight.
I mean, I kind of disagree budget-wise. I mean, between the Republican-led legislature and the governor, who wants to spend more money? it's the governor. So the more that the financial outlook kind of darkens and revenue falls off the table, I think that is in the favor of lawmakers.
I would only counter that ESAs are costing the state quite a bit of money. So if we want to have the argument on who wants to spend more money, we can get a couple graphs out on that.
Yeah, but you're not going to get the votes to do anything to repeal the ESAs on that. I just don't see that happen. That's kind of a die-on-the-hill issue with Republicans in the legislature, and they control it.
Sure, but does it have to be baked into the Prop 123 conversation? I think that's where the fight is.
Yeah, and to the point about who wants to spend more money or less money, there's going to be a lot of pressure at this point with the unknown out there in the near future economically. Maybe pass a baseline budget and kind of move on and see what happens.
I think Republicans would love that.
Matt?
Get out the popcorn and see. I think everything's on the table at this stage, but these guys got to come back from vacation first so we can have a real conversation.
And and it's not like a lot of people have actually noticed that the people are gone for 2 weeks.
Right.
I mean,
well, that's the problem too. I mean, I think we as a party need to message that and make that clear, because the general population has no idea, doesn't care unless they understand the ramifications of what's at stake. So we need to be talking about that.
all right, and then what's left for the governor to get done as well besides the budget, Prop 123. The stadium seems like there's a lot on the plate to get done here, but for the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th, you can get this all done.
Oh yeah, we got plenty of time. It's mid-May.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all seen the session go late into June. We've seen it go into July.
Yep. Yeah,
so it's plenty of time.
Well, with the DBAC bill, I mean, that's one of the big issues. That's still obviously there's a lot of talk that could end up as part of a budget deal. You see it breaking down like that, and I bring this up because we've seen a lot of budget deals that happen in the middle of the night. A lot of things gets passed, and then people get angry about that.
Yeah, I think that's realistic, just given how much focus has been on this particular issue. So I could easily see that coming up in a budget conversation. To what extent, or how much of that is resolved in there, remains to be seen.
I mean, the only thing we can say with certainty is people will get angry.
Yes.
Yeah.
How exactly it shakes out, I don't know.
Right.
Otherwise.
Yeah, there's always anger surrounding some of that. But we're going to have to take a quick break. And when we're back and when we return, more from the state legislature, including why you'll need to prove your age to look at porn online. And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. Let's take a look at some other headlines from the state capitol, including this: you're going to need ID to look at porn online. Let's bring our panel back in this. Let's start with you, Mr. Grotsky. What's interesting about this is a First Amendment issue in many respects, at least the people who are opposed to this bill. But Governor Hobbs vetoed this last year, and she's signing it this year. What's going on?
Well, I think this one is about protecting children, right, and what they can access online. So I think a lot of people understand that. And at the end of the day, she's got a lot of stuff that she's bargaining for in this budget. Obviously we discussed Prop 123. So I think in some cases, if she signs things that are bipartisan, that does strengthen her hand a little bit. So I think that's part of the calculation.
Yeah, Matt, we've seen several other states making these types of laws, this kind of legislation. They seem to be able to be challenged in court. It looks like the governor's setting herself up for another legal challenge, or the state for another legal challenge.
Yeah,
here.
it may well. It may well. Like you say, there are a number of states that have this, so we'll see how it shakes out. But again, like Matt points out, she is running for re-election in 2026, and this would be a difficult issue. Let me put it this way. This would be ready-made. This veto would be ready-made for campaign ads.
Okay, let's move on to get into some other bill signings that she did, because the governor does more than just veto bills, as we all know. Let's talk about one of the big issues over the past year. We've seen a lot of reporting done on the Gilbert Goons. If you remember, it's a group of teenagers that were attacking people out in the East Valley. We're starting to see some of them go to court. They've been accused of all sorts of assaults and things like that. So the legislature had passed an anti-swarming bill to prevent these types of attacks, and it's more than one person. If they attack somebody, could be charged with more severe penalties. That got signed into law this past week. Doesn't seem like there was a whole lot of opposition to that, but there was a little bit that are concerned, maybe some concern that this is a law that could be mishandled in the future, right?
Yeah, I guess that's a valid point. I think the broader population, and especially parents, have been looking for action on this for quite some time. So I'm not surprised that it got through. I'm not surprised it got signed. I think it signed. I think it should have been. But at the end of the day, you've got to protect things like this from happening. You got to protect your kids, and so I think most Arizonans are going to recognize that.
Yeah, and you've worked up on the ninth floor before. I mean, a bill like that, on such an emotional issue like this, and in a highly covered issue like that, it's hard to veto a bill like that when you're heading into a political year. You haven't had any concerns on this, correct?
This is one of the rare issues at the state capitol that has broad bipartisan backing. So I think it was a no-brainer for the governor.
Okay, and sticking with obviously with the governor, what she signed some APS legislation this past week, including one getting some heat for that would shield APS, and other utilities in Arizona from potential lawsuits if their equipment, if their infrastructure starts a wildfire here in Arizona. As we've seen in other parts of the country, this is an occurrence that does happen. It's not just fire. It's not just people who start these fires. Sometimes it's the infrastructure out there. This would protect APS and other utilities, correct?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that this is limited immunity. The initial bill was much broader immunity, so where it ended up was much more limited, and utilities are required to come forward with pretty exhaustive plans on what they're doing to clear the brush and make sure that the power lines are not a fire hazard. Ultimately, for proponents, they believe this bill is going to help keep costs lower for ratepayers, and that obviously impacts millions and millions of Arizonans.
But people like the Sierra Club are saying, like, just does not hold utilities accountable in these situations, and like if something goes bad, the burden of proof to show that these utilities were negligent and whatnot is a very high standard, so nobody's going to be held accountable.
I think that's flawed. I think people will be held accountable. As Matt pointed out, it started off very broad. It's been narrowed since, and there are already safeguards in place for a lot of these utility organizations. So I understand the concern, but I think ultimately it was the right decision, and I think most people are more interested with costs coming down than hypotheticals about emergencies. As wrong as that may be, I think everybody's about their bottom line at this stage.
Okay, and that kind of leads us into something that was an interesting story we saw reported this past week. I believe it was Capitol Media Services started doing some reporting on a legal defense fund that the Governor Hobbs had, and she's been won't disclose her donors. One of those donors that he did find was APS donated $100,000 to her legal defense fund that was set up for her campaign to defend herself against accusations made about her previous opponent in the governor's race. Donations, they buy results, do they, or not?
It's certainly interesting. It's caused a lot of intrigue. I mean, look, I worked with the governor. I've been around the state capitol a long time, as have you. I'm familiar with things like protocol funds that governors have to pay for travel and new furnishings and things like that at the office. A legal defense fund is certainly a new one for me, and the fact that it is not disclosed. The only reason we know about the APS donation is because APS is required to disclose all their donations, but otherwise we don't have any idea who's donating to this fund. Yeah. It's certainly an opportunity for potential abuse.
Yeah, and should the governor be disclosing this? Because I'm old enough to remember when the governor ran way back in 2022. She was going to be the most transparent governor. She ran on transparency, and she was a Secretary of State, and she always demanded transparency.
I think she's been transparent. At the end of the day, organizations are going to give money to all types of things where they think that they can curry favor. I don't necessarily think that's the situation here, but at the end of the day, let's zoom out. I don't think most voters are going to care about this issue a year from now. Sure, they might try to cut campaign ads around it, but the news cycle is just too busy. There's too many other broader issues, so I don't think it's going to be the wildfire that people want it to be.
Oh, pun intended. But so let's talk a little bit about, do you agree with that? I mean, do you think voters won't care, or do you see, is this an opportunity for Republicans who are trying to take her seat, maybe can make some hay out of this?
I just think it's more grist for the mill, more things that Republicans will point at. Whether this is particularly effective or not, it's a lot of explanation involved in this one.
But you start seeing the potential of a trend here, though, because you start looking at the inaugural fund that she didn't want to disclose there, some other things, and then this. Again, I go back to when she ran, she said she wanted to be an open and transparent governor. I mean, do you really think she's delivered on that promise?
Well, let's give her a second term and let's watch her be more transparent.
But do you think it's being transparent, though, when she's not disclosing who the people are in this? Do you think she's living up to that campaign promise?
I think she's doing the best she can, and that's what I would advise other Democrats to keep saying. Do you like that?
No, I like that. That's a good answer. And do you think the governor's delivered on that promise, Matt?
I think every governor is judged on the same thing. Are they creating a safe community for Arizonans? Is the economy a good one with opportunity and people having jobs? Is the border secure? Those bread and butter issues are what she's going to be judged on in a second term, and that's what the next 18 months is going to be about.
Agreed.
All right, that is all the time. Be sure to join us next week for more Politics Unplugged. Good night.